Hi, you're in IT. Do you want to earn 10K a month? Well, it's easy. Be a contractor. That's what they said to me. So I'm going to share my journey and inspire you, hopefully, so you can become a contractor as well and earn the money that you deserve. Let's crack on with it. Some of this material is taken from my 3Cs contracting course, which I'm sure is a link in the description below. And also, I'd like to mention the Tech Answers Club, where I hold a weekly Q&A session where you can ask me all sorts of questions about tech, and it does include how to be a DevOps contractor. So how did I get here? Well, I was a trainee for 2 years, fixing hardware, stuff like printers. Pretty basic. Servicing printers, get rid of printer jams, making sure that they're in top condition. I then moved on to engineer, where when I completed my training, they taught me all lots about hardware and things. And so I was then able to fix desktops. And then during a period of time, I crept on to not only fixing the hardware, changing network cards and stuff because I'm that old. And then they got me onto fixing the software side of things as well, installing operating systems, updating, configuring TCP/IP, and all that fun stuff. And so 2 years passed, and I graduated a bit more, and they'd let me touch servers, compact servers, massive things they were, loads and loads of memory, like 8 meg or something silly like that. These days, your mobile phone's more powerful. But I was able to fix these. I got compact certifications. I could swap out memory cards and CPUs, work on the operating system, install Novell and Microsoft. I know some of you younger people might not know what Novell is. Go look it up. Anyways, after 6 years of experience, I then thought, well, this is a good time. I've got loads of experience. I know what breaks. I know what good looks like. Let's go contracting. And so I got a contract for the equivalent of £500 a day in the UK. And so that's corrected for inflation. Back then it was actually about £250 a day, but inflation's a beast, isn't it? 500 quid a day from going from a salary, which was way lower than that. Amazeballs. So how can you do that? Well, you need to know lots about software. So when I was cutting my teeth into contracting, rather than just operating system software, we then delved deeper, looked at System Center Operations Manager, all of the System Center suite, how to configure servers, how to monitor servers. The configuring and the monitoring side is starting to come into its own, right? And then VMware, virtual servers, and all that stuff. And it wasn't very long after that when cloud computing then also kicked off into its own thing. And Amazon was started in like 1999 or something. I started my career in 1995. So I was kind of, just a little bit behind and then working with the cloud stuff. So you want to go into DevOps, do you? Well, the DevOps landscape is a market. The market has demands. What are those demands? The biggest demand from anybody working in DevOps is communication. After all, the whole point of DevOps is getting the developers talking to operations and operations talking to developers and making sure that we can dissipate that wall in between. But you also need some skills and some knowledge so that you can talk to both parties. We need the skills to work with containers so that we can deploy stuff. We need the skills to understand what CI/CD pipelines look like so that we can deploy more stuff. Anyways, what sort of salaries are we looking at here? Well, I did some Googling around, because apparently that's a word. And for the USA, permanent job between 92,000 and 127,000 a year. Sounds a bit high actually, but depends where you are in the country. USA is a big place. In the UK, permanent job at £40, £1,000 I should say. Up to, with a decent level of experience, £75,000 a year. If you've got tons of experience or very specific knowledge, then it could be even higher than that. But the average in the US is about $108,000 a year, and in the UK about £55,000 a year. What about contracting though? Well, it's different. In the USA, your day rates are about $300 a day to, like I say, a certain level of understanding is going to be about 15 and a half, 1500 a day, with the average is quite low, about $450 a day. Again, that's because the US is a big place. In some states, you'll earn way more than that. In other states, it brings the average down a little bit. In the UK, not even as big as a state, but so the rates are a bit more concentrated. We've got Manchester and London, and then remote stuff around the place. Contract rates about $830 a day to $750 a day if you're doing something specialist in London, with the average around $550 a day. So what toolkit do you need in order to have your 6 years of understanding of IT and things, as well as the tools to be able to talk to dev and ops? Well, Python is one of the most popular languages right now. It's not the only language out there. I mean, there's C#, there's .NET, there's all sorts of other things. But Python is great because it doesn't have a humongous learning curve to get into programming. It's quite well structured. It doesn't worry too much about types. You can use them if you want to, or you can ignore them at your peril. And you can get into Python and programming and doing APIs and sort of utility sort of scripts quite quickly. It can also do full-fledged web applications if you want to do that. And it can do, of course, the machine learning and artificial intelligence and all those sort of things with the bolt-on libraries that are available. That way we're now screeching ever so slightly from DevOps into maybe DataOps. Also programming bash scripts. Bash scripts are kind of like the core to sysadmin, system administration on servers. How to get a server to do stuff in a certain specific order just off of the command line, and then you automate the command line. Hooray, bash scripts. These are useful when you're building servers, if you're using tools such as Packer. And if you want to go that extra step on programming, then Golang is also very useful. It's great because you can create a single binary that can then be deployed to a server, and you can specify exactly what the server looks like, CPU and memory and things like that. And this binary will just run on your server without any other dependencies. If you wrote that same script in Bash, then you would need to have all of the Bash commands in your script installed, which they might be there, they might not be there. If you were writing something in Python, then you'd need all the Python prerequisites installed. But with Golang, you can forego all of that and just have your single binary, off it goes. Very useful for some use cases. Anyway, other tools. And so infrastructure as code, the Terraform with the firewalls and the networks and the servers and everything that we need for our environment in order to run our servers in. And we can define that with, like I said, Terraform, or we can use a bit of Ansible, and maybe you can practice sort of stuff with a home lab. I did a video a couple of weeks ago, I'll put a link in the comments as well, of what sort of home labs you can have so that you can practice this sort of stuff. Also, what else do we need in our toolkit? Well, Docker is certainly on that list. Dockerizing applications, microservices, makes deployments a heck of a lot easier. It gets over the it works on my machine mentality and packages, again, stuff into a little blob. And those little blobs can then be spread all over the place. You can use Amazon ECS, you can use Azure DevOps, or you can use Kubernetes, cluster management, Helm. And then we start to touch on deployments. What sort of deployment do you want? Do you want a rolling deployment, or do you want a blue-green deployment? And then there's some other deployments that I'm not going to go into in this short video. Once we've covered that side of things, then let's move into pipelines, CI/CD. There's Jenkins, there's GitLab, there's GitHub Actions, there's Circle CI. All of these do more or less the same job. You're going to define a pipeline in a file or in a job, and then define where you want to run it on an agent. These things then have all the prerequisites installed on them so that they can actually execute the commands in the job. And then they're usually going to do some stuff like build the thing, whatever the software is, run some automated testing against that thing. If the testing fails, tell the programmer about it so that the developer team can fix the thing. If it passes, then we're going to create an artifact, a deployable object that we can then put somewhere, which might be a Docker container or it might be a tarball. We need to store those, so now we need to manage the artifacts, make sure that we version tag them correctly. And of course, what I've not mentioned in this is Git. GitLab and GitHub and Jenkins and CircleCI all closely work in conjunction with Git, where you can store your source code and version it. And then all of this comes together, and before we deploy it, the final step is to do some security tests against our deployable object to make sure that we're not easily hacked. And then there's just one more step, monitoring. The thing of monitoring is how to get the logs. And off of those logs, we can then create some statistics and we can display them. So we stick the logs in something like Elastic. We collate the logs with Logstash or FluentBit, and then we display them on dashboards using Kibana or Grafana. And if you want to do some more advanced stuff, working with data generally, then there's also Splunk. I've seen that deployed all over the place, but it is an expensive option, whereas Elastic Stack can be done, bootstrap upwards and paying for support as required. So moving on from skills, what about certifications? What can we do to demonstrate to the customer that we can add extra value to them? We need to impress the customer for them to hire us in the first place, right? And so there are some certifications out there that will help you in this regard. Now, if the customer is an AWS house, then we can do Solutions Architect or DevOps Engineering Professional. If they're an Azure DevOps route, then there's some Azure DevOps certifications where they can be assured you know what you're doing in Azure. And of course, Google doesn't want to be left out of this either, so there's Google Cloud Professional qualifications too. Once we've got those certifications, how about having some real proof that we know what we're talking about? You can put some projects that are public on GitHub, so that should somebody vaguely technical want to know what you're doing, they can look at your Git repository, look at your commit histories, see what you've written before, what you've worked on, what you've collaborated on, and have some projects in there that might set an API up. It might use Terraform to create a simple API and have the code in there, and all as one nice package to demonstrate, you know your stuff. So we're ready. We're technical, we've got the tools, we've got the experience. Where do we find the first contract? Well, the first thing is to tell everybody that you're looking for a contract. I know, not everybody's looking for contracts, so if you tell some people that you're looking, then they might hear of other things. It's not necessarily you're going to hear about them first, it's going to be your network. So network with people, talk to people, say you're looking for contracts, have they heard anything? Make new connections with connections, and then that's what they call a network. So LinkedIn is very good at this. Reach out to other people so you can be part of their network, and then hopefully we can all help each other out. I also run a community as well, where we like to help each other out and support ourselves. More on that later. So you're talking to a customer. This is great. They've looked at your portfolio. They've ticked the skills off that are on your list. They've looked at your certifications and they feel that they want to interview you. This is an exciting step. But they will ask you, what is your day rate? What is your salary? And so you need to demonstrate to them that not only are you worth what you think you are, but you can demonstrate this through experience, and you can tell them why they need you specifically. And if you're negotiating, then you must be prepared to walk away. One of the best times that I've had when I've been negotiating contracts is where another party is interested. So I've got an auction between two customers that both think I'm great, and ultimately one of them's going to pay more than the other. As a contractor, what can I say? But if you've got an auction like that, then it puts you in a very strong position because you can walk away from either party. But that's not necessarily what you're going to choose. Sure, the number is important. Surely the number needs to be big, but we can also highlight what our best project is. What do we want to work on? What would make our heart sing with joy if we were to deliver a specific project or work for a specific client? That also comes into it. But there are some red flags. The red flags that I've noticed are if the client doesn't really have the budget. So they may love to pay what you're worth. You may well be worth what you say you're worth. But if they don't have the budget to pay you, then either they're going to take you on and then not pay you anyway, good position to be in, or they'll just string you on through the process of interviewing, which might be 2 or 3 stages, and then ultimately lowball you at the last minute. So check whether they've got the budget. Another red flag is project scope. It's like, we don't really know what you want to do, but we like the look of you. Can you just come up with all the answers and tell us everything? That might work, but then in conjunction with the first one, where they might have a constraint on the budget, then that puts you in a really tricky position where they want you to perform miracles, but you don't have the support. And also watch out for escape clauses. They might have a very tight escape clause where they can sack you after 2 days, but if you want to leave, then you have to give them 3 months notice. That's not very fair at all. And it's very strange if you leave yourself open to that. You might be in an environment that you don't like and you can't walk away from it. So in summary then, look at your current network. Who else, or who do you know who knows somebody else who can find you that ideal place that you want to work, that project that you want to work on? Update your LinkedIn portfolio. Say at the top, I'm looking for work. In the header, what's your ideal project that you'd like to be involved with? And then update your GitHub portfolio so that somebody can see you've got demonstrated evidence that you know what you're talking about. What is your ideal project? I'd love to know. Put it in the comments below, and you never know who's watching. So I'm going to finish on a joke. I know they're terrible, but here we go. Well done for getting this far through the video. Why did the DevOps engineer refuse the job offer? Because the company didn't have the right pipeline to deploy their talent. Rubbish. What can I say? Anyways, if you've got any questions or if you've got some better jokes, I'd love to hear them. Come over and see me at techanswers.club, and you can join me on the next Q&A or Wednesday lunchtimes, and it would be great to see you there. But until then, happy searching for contracts, and may all your deployments be smooth.